Today on the show, Joe Biden rips Obamacare a new one. We discuss the bets you can make around the big football game that's coming up, and we discuss why you can never finish the to-do list.
Welcome to the future, where the glass is half full and you'll need new glasses, where you'll be jumping from conclusions.
The past is a no, and a new future is born.
Never before in history has so much meant so little to so many. AD on the radio.
So I got an email after you and I discussed how Democrats are going after Obamacare. I know, it was a weird turn of events. It's very strange. But I got an email from Justin, who listens in... actually, Justin didn't say where. But Justin said, love listening to your show. Don't agree with everything you say, but I love how you present both sides of the argument and bring people together. As a lifelong Democrat, I have been deeply upset by how Democrats are going after Obamacare. The Affordable Care Act was presented to us as a cure-all for everything that ailed America, and now it's being called into question. It really makes you wonder where you're at with your own government. See? This is the thing. And it's one of those events where it's become a political linchpin for both sides. Healthcare is a very, very big deal. Donald Trump ran promising us that no one would be dying in the streets. And, well, Obamacare was held up to be, like our friend said, the cure-all for everything that ails America. Now, look, as you and I have discussed numerous times on the show, I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I don't believe in the two-party system for the most part. I mean, I like the idea of balance and all of the above, but I don't actually find the two parties to be that different. I find them to be Coke and Pepsi, brown fizzy water that should be avoided, generally speaking. I believe in when you're casting your vote, I believe in looking at the individual and looking at the policy and disregarding what party they're in. I genuinely do. I feel that way. I think that the two-party system is limiting, and it forces people to have a knee-jerk reaction out of a sense of loyalty, as opposed to clear thought about what's right when it comes to pulling the lever of democracy in this republic. But our friend brings up an interesting point. Obamacare is now being vilified by Democrats. Why? Because it looks like vilifying Obamacare is going to allow for some political leverage in the run-up to the election in 2020. People know that healthcare is a big deal. People know that people are afraid. Politicians are looking to capitalize on this. And how do you capitalize on this? By saying, I'm going to make things better. That thing that we have right now is no good, and guess what? I'm going to make things better. You won't have to worry about getting sick. You won't have to worry about breaking your leg. You won't have to worry about getting cancer. You won't have to worry about missing work. You won't have to worry about all these things because I'm going to wave my magic wand of politics and figure some stuff out. Now, in rather spectacular form, Donald Trump has not managed to figure anything out. So it's become something that is definitely in the crosshairs of aspiring politicians. Aspiring politicians, aspiring leaders of the free world, people that want to run for president, people that are looking to make some waves, people that are looking to make some noise, realize that they can go, okay, you're confused and feel left out because of the Affordable Care Act. You don't really understand it. It hasn't really worked for you. It hasn't worked for everybody. We have the solution to the problem. Trump didn't do it. We do. So it's become this issue of great weight and significance to the Democrats. And it has caused, in a weird twist of fate, Democrats to basically say that they want to tear down the Affordable Care Act. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's interesting. And you know who I think the most surprising proponent of getting rid of Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, that would be one of the guys who sort of helped make it happen. Joe Obamacare is a big effing deal Biden is in the midst of attacking the healthcare system. Did you see this? it's just an indicator of the fact that we live in some very interesting times. And look, maybe they're going after single-payer Medicare for all, something that Donald Trump has even suggested, a single-payer system. However, what Biden had to say was interesting, and it just, if you're like me, makes you trust politicians even less, because it's just like, hold on, you told us this was the answer to everything a few years ago, and now you're attacking it? Well, what are we supposed to believe? When you say things, are we supposed to believe them, or are we supposed to think that you're going to 180 on them in a couple years when you're trying to make some waves for yourself and possibly get elected? He was speaking at an MLK event. Joe Biden was speaking at an MLK event to Al Sharpton's National Action Network. And this is what he said. He said, and I quote, because it is a direct quote, "How do we fulfill the promise of working people who still go to bed like my dad used to, staring at the ceiling thinking, God, if I get prostate cancer or if my wife gets breast cancer, we lose everything? The single biggest reason for bankruptcy. How can we stand by guaranteeing that every single American can get affordable health care and medications? Because your health should not depend on the color of skin or your zip code, but it does." And if you're like me, you find this all to be deeply confusing. You find this all to be something that pretty much prevents you from ever feeling like you're going to trust a politician ever again. Because wasn't Biden one of the folks that was all about Obamacare? Wasn't Biden one of the folks that was all about how this was going to fix everything? About how this was going to stop those worrying conversations you had with the ceiling lying awake in bed, worried that you're going to get cancer? Biden was one of the leading proponents saying that Obamacare was going to fix our entire healthcare system. And it makes you feel like there was a lie. It makes you feel like you lied about what Obamacare was going to do. And what's strange is, I don't know, I haven't heard too many people on the left call him on it. Which is weird. It should be the left calling him on it. It should be the people on the left saying, hey, you made us a promise and now we're holding you accountable. Did you sell us a false bill of goods? Because it certainly seems that way. Yeah. The Washington Post pointed out that contrary to Biden and other Democrats' claims, research suggests that lack of health insurance causes less than 4% of bankruptcies. Not even close to being the single biggest reason for bankruptcies, as he claimed. It's almost like he's trying to, scare us into voting for something that is the complete opposite of what he suggested several years ago. And yeah. Do you feel as though your trust has been breached? Because I kind of do.
Real radio.
104.1.
Where the left and right come together for fundamental truths. AD on the radio, on Twitter at ADSXE.
Sure, why the hell not? It's 2019. Dwarf tossing is now officially part of our political process. Yeah. Sure. What the hell are we talking about? Well, I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that a couple years ago, nobody thought that dwarf tossing would become a storyline in and around political reporting, but it has. Trump's nominee to replace Kavanaugh on the U.S. Court of Appeals for D.C. Circuit, Naomi Rao, has the media all up in arms over her support of, dwarf tossing, the act that allows adult people to make money by allowing themselves to be thrown as part of this entertainment known as dwarf tossing. Yep. Yeah. Dwarf tossing. This is from the Washington Post. Back in 1991, when the Paris suburb of Marseille sur-Orge banned dwarf tossing at discotheques, Manuel Wackenheim, a little person, sued because he wanted to continue making a living being tossed. Yeah. In France, there was a dwarf. He was making a living by being tossed as part of dwarf tossing entertainment at discotheques. And, well, this place in Paris outlawed it, and he went, how am I going to pay my bills now? I was making a tidy little living, and now how I made my living is illegal. What happened in this landmark decision? Well, France's highest administrative court upheld the ban in 1995, stating that dwarf tossing affronted human dignity. This went up to the United Nations Human Rights Committee. Yeah, the United Nations Human Rights Committee upheld the decision in 2002, ruling on similar grounds. Now, in legal circles, the Manuel Wackenheim case, the case of the dwarf who was making a living being tossed in discotheques outside of Paris, this has become a bit of a landmark case. If you're going to school, if you're studying law, there's a very good chance that, especially if you have anything to do with legal ethics, you've seen this mentioned. This case has appeared in legal ethics journals and textbooks. What happened to the guy? Well, he's now 51, and he lives on the French-German border. And he ultimately found another line of work. He is a computer repair guy. But all of a sudden, the idea of dwarf tossing has re-evidenced itself in our American political process. So he's actually weighed in on it. He said people did not really understand the show. He said this in an email referring to his dwarf tossing days. He said, there are people who found it degrading, but for me, this made it all the more daring. Now, Rao, am I pronouncing that right? I think so, is currently the administrator of the White House's Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs, strongly disagreed with these rulings. She actually wrote about the issues in journal articles, and in a 2011 post on a legal blog, argued that the case demonstrates how a substantive understanding of dignity can be used to coerce individuals by forcing upon them a particular understanding of dignity irrespective of their individual choices. Basically, hey, I got the liberty to do something. This isn't undignified to me. Might be undignified to you, but why on earth should you get to decide my version of human dignity? If I want to make a living being tossed, then by God, I should make a living being tossed. Basically, she contended that this ban denied little people agency and opportunity to make money. A basic human right, or a couple of basic human rights. She actually drew parallels to pornography and legal prostitution. The Little People of America advocacy group is opposing her nomination to the D.C. Circuit Court, saying we vehemently disagree with Ms. Rao's view that banning dwarf tossing negates an individual's dignity. There you have it. Dwarf tossing has now made it into the American political process in the year 2019 because of something that happened in France many years ago. We live in interesting times. We strongly support our community in having individual choice in every aspect of their lives, and we advocate for equal employment opportunities so that our community need not be constrained to earning a living by being the recipient of a dehumanizing and injurious activity. The group says dwarf tossing bans are important in little people's effort to assert a regular place in society. However, actor and performer and little person Mighty Mike Murga says banning him from making a living is absolutely ridiculous. He said that he's trained in Olympic-style wrestling. He's trained in weightlifting, bodybuilding, and circus arts, including acrobatics and fire breathing. And the work that he does is just another stunt. Now, look, far be it from me to, in any way, shape, or form, say I understand what it is to go through life as a little person. I don't. I would never be so arrogant. I would never claim to be able to empathize with that. But I do kind of feel as though we live in America. There's lots of things that lots of us do that are seen as dehumanizing and demoralizing by a lot of folks. I suppose pornography, prostitution, these would be very high on the list. You look at pornography and prostitution, and you don't go, wow, I hope my daughter grows up to do that. Or I hope my son grows up to do that. But at the same time, it's legal. Is it dehumanizing? Maybe to you, maybe not to them. Maybe it is dehumanizing to them, but they do it anyway. See, there's this element of choice in America. There's this element of choice with regard to what you do to make your living within the confines of the law. But it's weird how someone saying they support the freedom of a person to go out and make a living in a way that is deemed legal has become, well, like I said, a sticking point in our political process in 2019. I'm curious to know what you make of it. Mighty Mike Murga says it's basically part of the circus arts that he studied. Basically an extension of his acrobatics and fire breathing training. Just another stunt. And then he said, I just learned to make a living at it and make hundreds of people happy watching it happen. And he feels like that's okay. And like I said, I would never, ever deem to say that I understand the experience of someone that I am not, especially such a specific experience. So it's not for me to say, you should or should not be allowed to do that. That's dehumanizing. That's demoralizing. But the idea that, well, there's a guy who's highly trained, enjoys doing this, makes money doing this, and gets the added thrill of knowing he's making people happy watching it happen, that's kind of compelling to me. Anyways, like I said, there you have it. The idea of dwarf tossing has made its way into our political process in 2019. We live, like I said many times before, and will continue to say, in interesting times.
For more stimulation and less irritation, 9 out of 10 doctors choose KPRC AM 950, Houston's more stimulating talk radio.
Don't get the blues, get all the news. We mean all of you guys out there in Radioland. All aboard!
He's back. AD on the radio.
Give it up, yeah. Give it up, yeah. Bring this on, come on, come on.
So, you know, I grew up in England, where, as Robin Williams once said, the police don't have a gun and you don't have a gun. So it's stop, or I'll say stop again. But when you hear people say that the government is coming for your ability to defend yourself and your home, and I'm going to hold on to my gun and pry it out of my cold dead hands and all of the above, if you're like me, you find it a little overly dramatic until you run across a story like this one. This man who's been charged with manslaughter for confronting someone who broke into his home. Yeah, been charged with manslaughter after somebody attempted to break into his home under the New York retreat doctrine. They wrote about it in the New York Post, which I used to read every single day when I lived in New York City. I used to read it on the subway. And you know what? Every once in a while, because they cover my beloved New York Mets, I still wind up reading the Post. But I haven't ventured off of the sports page. And notice I say page like I don't read it on my phone. But I haven't ventured off the sports page in some time. It was interesting. They said Queens resident, that's actually where I used to live, lived in Queens. Queens resident Joel Christopher Paul faced a home intruder threat in the early hours of July 30th, 2017. The 27-year-old was home in Springfield Gardens with his mother, brother, and sister when someone attempted to break in. The intruder, Shamal Shavo, 26-year-old man who had traveled to New York, traveled north from Maryland after being named a suspect in a shooting there 10 days earlier. Expecting a pizza delivery, Paul's brother, Michael, 16, went to the door and discovered Shavo trying to break in. Michael, gutsy 16-year-old kid, Michael forced Shavo to the surrounding area, and his mother called for help. Joel, adrenaline surging through his veins, answered the call. Brought a bat, brought a knife to the confrontation. And by the time it was all over, Shavo, who was attempting to break in, who was attempting a home invasion, received the ultimate lesson in picking the wrong house. He died at Jamaica Hospital after being clubbed and stabbed. Now, look, obviously somebody losing their life is a horrible and hideous turn of events. And if you're like me, you hope that if you're ever put in a position where you need to defend yourself and your home, it doesn't result in another human being's death. What a thing to have to carry around with you for the rest of your life. Or at least it would be for me. But this was a confrontation that had all the indications of a break-in gone wrong. This is a wanted man. And one high-ranking police source told the Post that the response was completely justifiable. However, months later, Queens DA Richard Brown submitted the case to a grand jury. And essentially brought complete and utter ruin upon this guy who is really, let's be real here, defending his home. Your 16-year-old brother encounters someone trying to break into your home. Your gutsy 16-year-old brother subdues him. Your mom calls you for help. Mom, brother, home. Someone trying to break in. You do what it takes to defend yourself and your family and your home. And then you wind up charged with manslaughter. Yeah, Queens DA Richard Brown submitted the case to a grand jury even after high-ranking police officials said that the response was justifiable. But this guy has been charged with manslaughter. A ham sandwich, as the saying goes, says in the Post, can be indicted in grand jury proceedings completely overseen by prosecutors, but prosecutors shouldn't have targeted Joel. The stress, the expense, the uncertainty of facing a first-degree manslaughter charge are devastating and can lead to an unjustified plea that could result in Joel going to prison. And look, if you are like me, like I said, when you hear people say, they're trying to take away my ability to defend my home and they'll have to come and take it and pry it out of my cold, dead fingers, and you think, all right, settle down there. Until you find out stuff like this actually happens. A man goes to jail, or could be going to jail, charged with first-degree manslaughter after doing what it took to defend his home and his family and the people that matter to him the most. Now, part of the trouble lies with this thing called the retreat doctrine. It's New York's retreat doctrine. The doctrine holds Joel had a duty to run and hide if it was safe to do so. It's an obligation Joel, like the vast majority of New Yorkers, had probably never heard of. Had you heard of the retreat doctrine? I've spent a significant portion of my life living in New York, and I was hitherto unfamiliar with the idea that if someone tried to break into my home, it was my duty to run and hide if it was safe to do so. What would I do under these circumstances? I got to be honest with you. Probably not made of the stern stuff that this guy is. But if I had to defend family, I don't know. I would probably do whatever I could. And if there was a bat handy, yeah. That would probably be my first means of defense, not being a gun carrier. But I had never heard of the retreat doctrine. It's not something they school you on. It's not something that you get taught growing up. It's not something that comes up all that often. Yeah, really? If someone tries to break into my home, I am legally obligated to run and hide? It's news to me. Anyways, it's likely that the Queen's DA will pursue precisely this avenue at trial, since the indictment states that Joel, with intent to cause serious physical injury to Shamal Shavo, caused his death. While most jurisdictions would have left this guy alone, would have left Joel alone, the Queen's DA seems to want to resurrect the city's bad old days. There was a time in New York City's history when prosecutors developed this reputation of interpreting laws in ways that protected criminals more than they protected victims. According to the New York Post, there is also an abuse of prosecutorial discretion here. The DA should have recognized that Joel was forced to make split-second decisions. Have to make a split-second decision to defend your vulnerable family members, your 16-year-old brother and your mom. Even if Shavo was initially repelled, Joel had no time for a thoughtful inquiry into what Shavo would do next, unless he saw him running away down the block. Brown's office should also review its own files to get a better sense of the devastation wrought by home invaders over the years. You do that, you're going to find unsolved murders, sexual assaults, general terror inflicted on mostly working class victims. And what if Joel had acted, as they say here, less assertively, and Shavo had grievously injured him or his family or killed one or more of them? Prosecution after the fact would have offered no relief. No criminal sentence can put victims back together. Prosecution doesn't raise the dead nor mend physical and mental scars left by crime. At times, the only defense is an unrelenting offense against a criminal that you can assume has the worst of intentions. Unless there is more to this case than the DA has let on, those who neutralize criminals who threaten the sanctity of our homes shouldn't face criminal charges. Yeah. Why do we bring this up? Well, I suppose for a bit of perspective. Now, you might be someone who's listening in Texas, where you can defend your home as you see fit if someone steps onto your property. And you might really value that. You might be someone that thinks guns are a barbaric thing. And bear in mind, this isn't even a gun we're talking about. This is the ability to effectively defend your home, your young brother, your family, your mother with a baseball bat. So when people say they're coming for your ability to defend yourself, it's a piece of perspective. On occasion, they might be right.
Now, more AD on the radio.
All right, in the time we have left, let's you and I take a look at the events of today in our segment, My Witness News. Shall we? Yes, I think we shall. This is kind of a big one. This is a big freaking deal. I don't fully understand how this becomes the exclusive property of just one company. But for the first time since 1901, conversation hearts won't be on sale for Valentine's Day. Is it really Valentine's Day if you can't hand someone a small, chalky heart candy that says, "Be mine"? I don't think it is. And you know what? I think that a piece of our childhood just died. Because for the first time since 1901, this Valentine's Day, conversation hearts will not be on sale this year. They were made by the folks over at that company, Necco. You ever have Necco wafers? Not good. Or at least I never cared for Necco wafers. I know a lot of people that swore by them, but here's the thing. Those candy conversational hearts that became such an integral part of our childhood experience during Valentine's Day were made by Necco, and they went out of business last July. The Spangler Candy Company acquired the rights to make conversation hearts, but they weren't able to get production set up in time for this year. And I guess it's the exclusive property of whoever owns the license to them. Like, who would have thought there could be such a specific set of rules governing who could put messages on pieces of candy? But apparently, the folks who own the rights to make the conversational candy hearts, well, they weren't able to get up and moving in time, and nobody else can do it. Yeah, that means no conversation hearts in 2019. On the bright side, Spangler says they will be selling them again next Valentine's Day. Even though the conversation hearts don't taste all that good, they are the number one Valentine's Day candy over chocolates, over everything else. Before they went under, Necco was pumping out 8 billion of the hearts per year. And apparently they were the biggest part of their business. And they had the exclusive on them. Who knew? Well, now we do. Oh, man. Did you see that there's all these prop bets around the super terrific big football game that I don't think I'm allowed to mention by name on the air? You can bet on all sorts of things. Online sports books, including whether or not Adam Levine of Maroon 5 will be wearing a hat during the halftime show. Online sports books, they're always offering these super random prop bets around the game, which let you bet on all the nonsense that surrounds a game. One site has already got their lines up, and, well, here are the 10 highlights. What color will the liquid be that is poured on the game-winning coach? Lime green or yellow is the odds-on favorite. What will be the predominant color of Adam Levine's top at the start of the halftime show? You can bet on this. Black is most likely. Apparently, if you Google him, he wears a lot of black when he's performing. Will Adam be wearing a hat at the start of the halftime show? No is the odds-on favorite. According to Google searches, Adam very rarely wears hats. So, there you go. Will Adam Levine, Travis Scott, or Big Boy take a knee? Will any player take a knee during the national anthem? It's interesting, and no, by the way, is the more likely of the two scenarios that you can bet on. It's interesting that the odds of the halftime entertainment kneeling are better than the actual players. Will Gladys Knight forget or omit a word from the national anthem? The odds makers have faith. Odds are she doesn't. The odds she does botch it are 3-1. Will any player use a prop during a touchdown celebration? No, are the odds. Is the odds-on favorite. Now, it's unclear if they count the ball as a prop. They probably don't, since that would make it far more likely. Will both teams combine to score 76 or more points to break the Super Bowl record? No is the favorite. Will President Trump congratulate the winning team on Twitter by midnight on the day of the big game? Yes is the more likely of the two bets you could place. And Oh, this is my favorite. Will the expression dilly dilly be said during a Bud Light commercial? Just when you thought it had run its course. Yes, is the odds-on favorite. Now you know. Place your bets accordingly. You are now educated. Oh, this is an interesting one. You can add bacon to any item at McDonald's for free next week. Yeah, free bacon. It's really, it's not a bad gimmick. Get free bacon? Oh, okay. I'll show up. Where do I have to show up? McDonald's? I can do that. McDonald's finally noticed that bacon is super popular. They're a little slow on the uptake. And they're about to start rolling out bacon cheese fries and Big Macs and Quarter Pounders with bacon on top. But for 1 hour next week, you won't have to stop there, because next Tuesday from 4 to 5 p.m., you can go to McDonald's and add 2 half pieces of bacon to anything on their menu for free. They're calling it the Bacon Hour. That's not a bad idea. That's clever, as gimmicks go. Want a Filet-O-Fish with bacon, McNuggets with bacon, a hot fudge sundae with some bacon sticking out of it? Not a problem. Crumble bacon on your vanilla milkshake, a fruit and yogurt and bacon parfait. It is all on the table, my friend.
Introducing Bacon Hour. 1 hour from 4 to 5 p.m. local time to get free bacon with anything. Filet-O-Fish, apple pie, hash browns, McFlurry, and anything else your bacon heart desires.
Bacon, 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 bacon.
We're celebrating the Big Mac bacon, Quarter Pounder bacon, and cheesy bacon fries with Bacon Hour, January 29th, 2019, 4 to 5 p.m. local time.
Mickey D's. I know it's a limited time only, but you might want to keep it around.
So there you have it. Put it on the to-do list. Go to McDonald's, get free bacon. Although you gotta finish your to-do list. Yeah, this was also in the news today. The vast majority of us cannot finish everything on our to-do list. Why? Well, do you ever do that? Do you make the to-do list? I find that the to-do list, I find the big proponents of the to-do list, people that make a lot of to-do lists and do their best to stick with them, are disorganized husbands who get told by their wives, write this on your list, otherwise you're going to forget it, because, you're forgetful. I love you and everything, but you are forgetful. I find that the to-do list is often the end result of that scenario. I know a lot of guys who make to-do lists. I know a lot of guys who have to-do lists made for them by their wives or girlfriends. And then, what's very interesting? The other folks that I know that are big proponents of the to-do list are people who I know were in Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous. And this is actually a great piece of advice. I got it from a friend of mine who was in AA and said this was one of the things that really helped with his sense of self-esteem when he was going through the program and working the steps. He said a to-do list was a big part of what made him feel good about himself. He said he was really low on self-esteem, but when he wrote down all the things that he had to accomplish in a day and got through it and was crossing them off, he was like, with everything that I crossed off, I didn't necessarily expect to get to all of them. I felt a little bit better about myself. And so that's something that I adopted. I started making my own to-do list because my friend in AA recommended it. And I got to tell you, there really is something to do it. Of course, I don't usually finish mine, as we all don't. You ever make that to-do list and then by like 2 p.m. you might as well set it on fire because there's no way you're ever even going to get close to getting everything done? According to a new survey, the majority of us say that we take on so much stuff that we can't ever accomplish everything on our to-do list. And here are the 5 things that keep us from getting everything done. Trying to be helpful, being accommodating, polite, instead of just doing what it takes to get it done. Jumping in to fix too many new problems that pop up. Not being sure which tasks we aren't expected to take on. Working for a boss who makes impossible demands. And being bad at saying no. There you go. Have yourself a good one. I'll be back soon. We'll do it all over again.